Okay, welcome everyone. I am Casey Robertson, and I am the host tonight for our third Thursday webinar presented by the National Organization of Parents of Blind Children. Just to give you a little background, tonight's webinar is hosted by the NOPBC, and we are a national membership organization of parents and friends of blind children, reaching out to each other to give vital support, encouragement, and information. We have over 3,000 members in all 50 states and divisions and parent contacts in about 30 states plus Puerto Rico. We facilitate the sharing of experience and concerns among parents of blind children. We develop and expand resources available to parents and their children. And we help parents of blind children gain an understanding and a perspective through the partnership and the mentoring within our group. So our third Thursday webinars are based on information that we have found that parents have been interested in and needed more information. So tonight's webinar is going to be on Stop the Madness of IEPs, because we've all been there. We've all had that IEP or two or three or four that drive us crazy, okay? So going kind of along with March Madness, we're going to say stop the madness of IEPs. So this webinar will be recorded and placed on our website within the next few weeks so that you can go back to it if you would like. All the documentation that we will use tonight will also be posted on the website so that you can have access to it. So tonight we're going to cover two vital areas. We're going to cover organization of our IEP information, our documentation for IEPs, and we're going to cover effective communication with our school districts and the leaders that are working with our students. Okay, so two very important areas for parents and friends of blind students, because we do have some, I think we have some advocates on this meeting as well, and it's very important for them to have both of these, organization and effective communication as well. So our speaker tonight, I am so excited, is Miss Pat Renfrans from Salt Lake City, Utah. And she is a scientist and has worked at the University of Utah for many years as a member. I'm sorry, I lost my place. She's worked as a scientist in Utah and as a member of the teaching faculty and as a research scientist. So lots of knowledge there. She's also a parent of two adult children. Her oldest daughter is blind and a recent graduate of University of Minnesota. Woohoo! Yay, we are so happy for her. She served on the board for the NOPBC since 2007. She has been also the treasurer for the NOPBC from 2009 to 2015. So we're thankful for that. And she's also a member of the Utah POBC and has been for many years. She also served as a parent liaison program within the special education department in her school district. In addition to providing all the support to the families with blind children, she was also an asset as the liaison for other students. She has a strong interest in science and math education, tactile graphics, which I love because our kids are not getting enough of those, and access and provision of school materials on time, not May after they have started the school district, but on time. So I'm going to welcome Pat to us tonight. And Pat, you have the floor.
Hi, everybody. It's so I'm so thankful to be here, and I thank Casey for asking me to participate. in this webinar. And I'm so pleased I see names on the list of participants. I see names I recognize and names that are new. And it's great to know that the community is out there and active, and I'm really excited to be here. What I'm going to talk about here at the top is organizing your special education file, organizing all those papers and notes and materials and things like that that you have at home. And the content of this is based on a workshop that we did at National Convention in 2019. We, meaning Melissa Riccobono and I, worked on it together. And I'm hoping that we can talk about that for a little while. And then we can also, Casey can follow through and talk about, like, how do you even write a letter? How do you start to get what you need from the people who work with your kids? And I want to say also up front that if you guys have questions or if you want to interrupt me, I don't have a problem with that. I'm going to load up a PowerPoint, but I'm a Zoom novice. So if it's not working, if you're not seeing what I'm talking about, or you can't follow, if I'm not describing it well enough, just speak up and I'm happy to convert to another method. So I'm going to try to share my my PowerPoint here. Let's see, which one? This one? Okay. So can somebody confirm that they actually see a PowerPoint? Okay, thank you. Thank you. I see some thumbs up. All right. So what we're going to talk about first here is some ideas for organizing the special ed materials that you have. And the basis of this is as follows. So we're here because we have concerns about the education our child is getting and receiving. And we need to, in order to make any changes, we need to be able to communicate our concerns with the right person at the right time and in a way that's going to get the concern answered. And one way to do that is to practice communicating effectively, to organize our thoughts, to tease away facts from our emotional response to an issue. And keeping organized notes, which is what we'll talk about first, is a foundation that we can build on in order to have effective communication. And I'll tell you up front that I am not by nature an organized person. I like to have things organized. I like to be able to find something. And it's also true that I am by nature, I would come home with paper and throw it on the kitchen counter and there it would stay, right? And then I wouldn't be able to find it and it would be frustrating. So this is the systems that I'll talk about are kind of built on things that my family kind of worked out in process. And if it'll save you guys a little bit of time and angst as you're working through these issues, then I hope it will be helpful to you. So why to keep good records? Why to organize all those papers and notes and our thoughts and everything? It makes documents ready. They're ready when you need them. You can find them. It helps you prepare for your meetings. It helps you think about goals when you're looking through. You can read a letter, you can read a document, you can read an IEP goal, and you can think, what did this mean when I got this? What does this mean now? It helps you communicate. It also, I believe this pretty strongly, is that it affects how school districts and administrators perceive you and your student. And that can be a protective factor for your child. So if you're proficient at record keeping and written documentation, and when you arrive at an IEP meeting, you have a notebook with you to write in and a record of what's been said before. then teachers and administrators, they gain respect for you. And that means that they're more likely to follow through on providing services and supports. And I have no doubt that it helped us as a family when we could say, I have in my notes that, you said that this was going to happen in May and it hasn't happened yet. And here are my notes about it. And it provides a basis on which to inquire about what's going on. So what I'll talk about then in this part of the webinar is how do you develop a system for a binder or a file management system that you like to use and that you can keep up to date. And that becomes that's actually the hardest part for me personally in my life in general, is keeping, like you can get files set up, you can have a plan in place, you can have a binder, but because of the constant barrage of life, it's hard to manage keeping it up to date. And that's something that you have to work on, the time management part of it. There are different systems that people come up with, and you can search online. You can Google IEP Binder Ideas, and you'll have a lot of resources out there. Some people are strong proponents of a 3-ring binder system, or like a medical 2-prong kind of file folder system. Other people like a file cabinet or a file drawer or a plastic file box that they can dedicate to this information. And a lot of you are a lot younger than me. You're not kind of pencil and paper people anymore, and you may prefer just a digital file folder system. And none of them is best. Any of them will work, and the one that works for you is the one that's going to be most effective to yield good results for you. We'll also talk a little bit about note-taking, how to organize notes, conversations, things like that. We'll talk about a workflow system for actually sitting down and setting up a binder or a folder system. We'll talk about developing a contact list for your binder and some details on the contents. So anybody have any questions or anything to begin with? Okay, I will get going then. Let's see. Okay, so there are different types of organizing systems that we can talk about. One is, as I said, is to actually have a binder, a 3-ring binder or whatever. And in that case, you want to have a binder. You probably want to have maybe tab dividers that you can label with what's at each tab position. You might want to have some pocket folders that you can put things that maybe are loose in. Oh, my cat just attacked my dog, sorry. Okay. You might want to have a zippered little binder pouch, like maybe one of your kids has in their notebook for school, that you can put a little hole punch in. You can put a highlighter, sticky notes, whatever. Maybe you're a person who likes page protectors, so have a bunch of those sitting by. Have paper, blank paper for taking notes. And then what you want to keep in mind is that your binder is going to fill. So you want to have maybe you want to have multiple binders, or you want to have a file drawer that you can put the older stuff in. Another option is to have a file cabinet drawer or a plastic file box that's your system. And this is actually what I did. That's what I prefer. So in which you can have labeled file folders. You can have hanging files to separate things out, a chronological notebook, and we'll talk about that. And you can have a portable box on hand so that when you're having an IEP meeting, you can pull folders that you want, things that you want to talk about. So like I have so like for me and my family, I'm actually going through and getting rid of everything IEP related, but I had this plastic file box. Charlie, come here. Come here. wait, plastic file box, and in it I had my my spiral notebook. This is not organized because I've been like going through it, pitching stuff, but I had a spiral notebook that I put all of my written notes I wrote in my spiral notebook. And then I had file folders, like here's one for, come here. My file folder for 7th grade. I have a label. I can put anything for 7th grade in there and I could find it. That was for IEPs. I would also have a folder that had, say, articles that I copied or printed out, or referrals for things for teachers. Come here. I'm sorry. Come here. I had a big folder on cane choice, cane issues, cane travel issues. And when the meeting was about that, I could pull those documents with me to share. So that's how I did it, but other people might prefer an actual binder. You can also do this digitally. The key here is that your files need to have names that make sense to you. Organize your documents just like you would in a paper or cardboard file, or organize them into folders, organize them into subfolders that have names and have labels. And I know I'm not showing you, for example, in this talk, I'm not showing you my desktop or my hard drive, because things get disorganized really quickly. You have a bunch of downloads and you have a bunch of this and a bunch of that. The only way that you can keep track of them in a way that's timely, without getting frustrated about it, is to organize them as they come in, into a folder and a subfolder that you have given a name to. If it's a digital system, you're going to want to back it up, and you're going to want to have them on maybe on a thumb drive or cloud drive or whatever, so that you can access them when you're at a meeting. So those are 3 different methods that you can use, and I'm sure there are a lot of other methods out there, but you pick the one that maybe you have a system that's working for you for something else, for medical records or for taxes or for books you like or whatever. If you have a system that you like, you can always modify it so that it works for all your special education documents. So I think that's the key. Okay, so here's a topic that I want to talk to you about, and that is keeping notes. So I would strongly urge families to have a way to jot notes on hand with you, right? So they can be handwritten, they can be a recorded note, they can be an audio, whatever is going to work for you. But once you have a note, then you can transfer it into your system. So for me, I used a spiral notebook, and it allows you to keep your notes in sequential order. We'll talk about that in a minute. You might use a note-taking app. You might use an audio note. You might use a slate and stylus. It doesn't matter. The key is that if you have loose pieces of paper or unlabeled, unnamed computer audio recordings, if they're loose, they're lost. And so a key would be when you have that, like I can remember walking around, and I had in my car a little tiny spiral notebook, one of those little like 3x5 spiral notebooks. And I had it in my car in the glove compartment, and I could pull it out and make notes on it when I needed to. But then when I got home, I could take that note out. I could rewrite it into my spiral notebook, or I could rip it out and just tape it into my spiral notebook, date on it. And that's just, it's a way to keep all your notes in one place so that you can keep track of it. So let's see what's next. Okay, so if you're making notes, what are some good things to include on any kind of note that you're taking? First of all, it's a nice habit to get into, to not think of notes as just disputes, right? It's not just, because I know that we're writing down things or we're making a mental note of things that happen that are problems, that are issues. But keep some notes on feedback from a teacher on something that worked really well. Make a note about, oh, here's a name of someone who's a good advocate on tactile graphics. I'm going to make a note of that person's name. And those kinds of notes, they give you, it's like, it's refreshing to look in a notebook and see there are positive things in here as well. Oh, this field trip to the petting zoo was really fun for my kid because there was somebody there who made sure she had access to all the animals. And it's a matter of training yourself to write things down. And this is something that for me started way back in school and became more formalized actually in science, having to keep lab notebooks where you have to write down exactly what you did and how you did it, write dates down and things like that. And it's just a habit. And once you form the habit, then it will go easier, there's no doubt. There are some things that you might want to consider including on your notes. So the date, the form of contact. So was this an in-person conversation? Was this a phone call? Who initiated it? So did the teacher call you? Did you call them? Who participated? Was there more than one person? Was it the O&M instructor and you and your kid? You know, whatever, who was there? What prompted the communication? What was discussed? What was decided on? Or interventions that were suggested, anything that people came up with to try, and then a follow-up on who's going to do what next. Because if that's kind of the key to getting these things active, right, is to say, are you going to be the one to call this meeting then? Am I going to be the one? I'm going to make that call to the Brailleist and make sure this is happening. Just keep that in mind. Who's going to follow through on this? And there's, I'll provide these documents after the fact, but there's a website called understood.org that has actually a lot of decent special education materials, binder information, things like that. It's more general special ed and for more high incidence disabilities. But they have a little log form that you can print out and you can just handwrite it, or you could make a template document in your in Word or whatever, and save them that way. So there's sources out there for templates for these things. Okay, so some more note-keeping tips. So I found myself that a spiral notebook was good, and I liked a spiral notebook for several reasons. And one of them was that the president of the NFB in Utah at the time, Ron Gardner, who's also an attorney, told the parents of blind kids in Utah to keep our notes in a spiral notebook, because then they are chronological, and it becomes sort of a document that can be used when there are disputes. Personally, it's just a way that I like to take notes. So an advantage, like what Ron would say, is that they're chronological, the chronological record of what's happened. The disadvantage is that they're chronological. So you can't, like, if you're trying to remember, oh gosh, there was a conversation with somebody about cane tips and where to get them, and but I can't remember when that was. It's hard to find it in a spiral notebook, or it can be. So I had a thought, just because of my own kind of personal issues with organizing, which is to steal some techniques from bullet journals. And bullet journals are like this huge thing online, and people make these really fancy bullet journals and all these systems, and God love them. I admire anybody who does that. That is not what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something really simple. So the ideas that I would steal from bullet journaling that could help with a spiral notebook is first, to use numbered pages in your spiral notebook. So if you're, you can buy a bound notebook with numbered pages. You can number the pages as you go, whatever. At the front, you want to have an index. So you set aside, when you start your new notebook, a few pages at the beginning. Or if you've already started a spiral notebook, it can go somewhere and you just stick a tab on it so you can find it again. And in this case, you're essentially making a table of contents. So you can list an item with a date and a page number. So you could have on this front page, you could have notes from talk with guidance counselor on such and such a date and the page number that appears on. Conversation with the Brailleist on this date regarding math assignments and the page number. And that way you can more easily track down your notes from conversations and meetings and things like webinars like this, whatever. You can more easily find them. And then when you're making your entry, your note itself, then you can make sure that you give it a title and that title reflects the content, just like you would in a digital file. The neat thing you can also do is you can create, in bullet journals, they call it a collection. And a collection is really just a set of information that pertains to a topic. And it's a list that you can go back to and add to it in time. And so maybe you want to start a list of stories that have a blind protagonist, so that when you're looking for one, when your child is looking for one for a book report or something, you can easily access this. So you can have in your index a collection of stories with a blind protagonist that starts on some page. And then you turn to that page and you can start with the couple of stories that you know about. And then with time, as you come across one in the news, or you come across one at the library or whatever, you can just add that to that list. And it just keeps it all in one place. So
I've always found it easy too. If you forget your notebook, because we know we all don't carry notebooks around, to write it in your phone, put it in your notes. That way, when you get back to your notebook, you know, it'll be there, you'll remember.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's really important. And I think you could do the same thing with little audio recordings. So like if you didn't even want to have to type it out right on your phone, you could just hit the microphone and make a little recording of your thoughts about something that happened. And then when you get home, you can transcribe it, put it in your notebook. So yeah,
Because
that's
any
great.
notes are better than no notes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, because there's just this whole special ed stuff is just, your brain gets full. It just gets full and you can't remember everything. So yeah, so that's a great suggestion. Thank you. Oh, so like here's an example of one. So this is an IEP related. So this is a picture that shows the first page and the cover of a spiral notebook that a family member was having medical issues. And I traveled, I wasn't at home. And there were things happening every day. There were conversations with medical people. There were conversations with people, experts that were outside of the direct medical care, and referrals that were being made. And I was lost. I could not, because it's a stressful situation, I couldn't manage it. So I went and I did the same thing I did with IEPs. I went to the, CVS, and I got a spiral notebook. And on the first page, I started with page numbers and items. So I have notes on the lead up to the event, notes from a meeting. I have events that occurred on a specific day. So everything is dated. I have, and I could actually look back at this table of contents and say, oh yeah, that conversation with Dr. X, what happened then? I can't remember. Okay, I'm going to go back and look. And And actually on my facing page, I had Post-it notes that I taped down. Post-it notes will come loose. So I taped them down. And on the Post-it notes, I just had kind of a chronology that I could add to on what happened when. And it just, for me, it's not like, this isn't something I'm going to show anybody, but for me, it helped me organize my thoughts about what was going on and what needed to be done and what the next step was going to be. So that's my, nothing fancy. Nothing fancy. So, okay. Okay, so take a breath and we can move on to the workflow for setting up your system. So you can Google, as I said, IEP Binder. There's information on Wright's Law. There's information on Understood. There's information on this website, A Day in Our Shoes, which is organized by a parent of a kid in special ed. And they all have really good ideas on setting up a binder method. And so the technique for doing this thing is, first you decide on what method you want to use. You want to decide on your ordering technique. So some people suggest keeping everything in order by date, oldest in front to newest in the back. Others prefer organizing documents by type, putting the newest documents on top. And as I said before, whatever is simpler, whatever's easier for you to use, whatever you've done in other systems that works, do that. And there may be legal reasons for keeping things in a particular way. And if that's something you're concerned about, I would look on Wright's Law, I think, for how they suggest organizing it. In fact, they organize by date, not by type. And again, do what works. Do what's worked for you in the past. Modify it. You're going to need supplies, maybe. If you're working on your computer, maybe you don't need supplies, but maybe you need to get a binder. Maybe you need to get a hole punch, whatever. Find some supplies and then set aside time to do this. It's taxing. It's for me, even just looking through the old files that I had, it's emotionally draining to do that. And so, work for 20 minutes, set a timer, go away, walk the dog, take a breath, make some tea, whatever, relax for 10 minutes, and then go back and work on it again. You're not walking away in order to leave it. You're walking away to just get your strength back. And another suggestion is, don't read stuff as you're putting it in your binder. You're looking at, this is the IEP. I'm not going to read the IEP and see all the issues with it. I'm just finding a place for it at this point. Okay. Then you're going to want to gather the documents. So in another couple slides, we'll be looking at a checklist for content. And like I said, you can look online, you can download checklists. If you don't have a copy of a document, say maybe you don't have your evaluation for special education. We didn't. We discovered she had never really been evaluated. So if you don't have a document, you can write a letter to request it. And that's something I think Casey's going to talk about in a little bit. If you're working from print, or even if you're working, I think, digitally, you will want to have kind of essentially a table of contents, an organizer, master document list, whatever that you want to call it, on which you can track the documents that are in your system, where they came from, what kind of document they are, and if you want to put it in at this point, why it's important that you have it. And that's something that Wright's Law has. And again, something like Wright's Law, any of these sites, their language is centered around more high incidence disabilities. So you have to think a little bit about how do I modify this so that it works for my kid? But at least there's some good ideas out there. You want to make sure that your documents have a date, and then you're going to assemble them in your notebook. And part of your notebook is going to be a calendar. You're going to write dates in your calendar. And lastly, and this is part of the time management issue, is set an appointment on your calendar when you're going to work on the binder, when you're going to organize what you have, transfer things in and out, look through the stack of little pieces of paper that you've collected despite your best intentions. It's work, schedule it, and then do it and give yourself, a little reward for doing it. Because it's time, it's work. Okay, so let's see. So here are some ideas for what people typically put in their IEP binder or file system. So at the front, you're going to want to have a checklist or an organizer. And that it's nice if it includes the date of the documents that you're putting in. A calendar. So your yearly IEP cycle, your monthly school calendar, including your notes regarding when something is supposed to happen. So if, in our case, we had huge issues with books being ordered on time. There was a deadline that was set by the state and our district wasn't meeting that deadline. And I could make a note in a paper calendar at that point to say, books need to be ordered by this day. I could set something 2 weeks prior to that to say, check with our TVI to see if the book list is getting put together, right? So it's a way to trigger you in terms of what needs to happen when. And as I've said before, if you have a calendar system you like and use, you can build on that. And one little reminder here that's worth keeping in mind in terms of IEPs is that I think that as far as I know, this is still true, that there's a 2-year limit on filing due process. So if there's an issue with your IEP and you're going to file due process on an issue, you want to make sure that you're doing it within a 2-year window. And a calendar is a way, obviously, to keep track of that. So you can also have things like, in terms of the IEP cycle, if your IEPs are due on, the 15th of September, your your child's current IEP expires, so there has to be a meeting by that date. Maybe a week or two ahead of time, you want to get a draft of an IEP, and you can put that on your calendar to request that. Okay, let's keep going. Your binder should have a place that you can put communications that you've had. So I'll show you an example of something that I was working on that's a contact list that you can fill out and put it at the front, at the top of your binder. And you can do it for each school year or each semester, or however, if you move, you can redo it, whatever. And on the contact list, you want to think about who would you contact if there's an issue with the general ed teacher, if there's something to do with O&M, if there's going to be a field trip, if there's going to be a PTA carnival, then who would you be contacting, and then put that information on the contact list. Your communications section would also include your notebook or your records log, however you've decided to keep those notes, your audio files, whatever. Those would go in the communications section. And then, of course, letters and emails and such to and from school. So these are more formal communications. So maybe notes that you've gotten from teachers about issues that are coming up. Correspondence, so emails that you've written to your district special ed director, emails that you've received from people, printed letters that you've sent, or printed letters that you've received. You really want to be able to keep track of these, because these are things that the district are going to take seriously. And they should all have dates on them to begin with, but you want to make sure this is all all dated. Okay, so that's communication section. And then, so this was a contacts list example. So I had looked on understood.org. They had a contacts list that it had some good stuff on it, but again, it was dealing more with kids who have who have different issues or have kind of unique issues. I think our kids have certain contacts that people don't know about, and your regular ed teachers may not know about. And I'm happy to provide this to anybody who might want a copy. So this would just be a table that would have sections on it so that you could look up, who do I call, who do I email when this comes up. So you can have a regular ed section that would have your classroom teacher. If your child's in secondary school, would have guidance counselor, your principal, might have the person in the school who's in charge of scheduling school-wide testing, might have the person in the school or the district, whatever, who oversees accommodations, providing accommodations. You might have a link to a person who oversees school curriculum. So like for us, it was handy to have regular ed, state science curriculum for 6th grade. It was worth having that information at hand. And here is, in this case, I could put the name of the person who would have that information. You might want to have the PTA or PTO, whatever person contact in there, whoever oversees field trips, whatever, people who, so that you can anticipate issues that other people might have. And it would be great if the PTA never had that, oh my God, there's going to be a blind kid coming on this, on this field trip. It'd be great if that never happened, and someday that will be the case. Right now, I don't know. For us, it was certainly an issue. So here are people you can contact about that. You might also want to have a section that's specific to your blind and visually impaired services in your district. So your TVI's name, who are you gonna contact at the school when the regular ed teachers don't know what to do? Who's your Brailleist? What's the state instructional materials accessibility center? Who's that person? How do you get in touch with them? Where's your state's educational resource center? They have all sorts of materials from the APH that your TVI can use. And sometimes the TVIs don't keep track of it. So who's that person? Who would you contact about that? Other related services, your O&M instructor. Who do you call if you have equipment failures? Who's the paraeducator? What happens if the paraeducator isn't doing their job? Who do you call about that? So it's just kind of, this list is as much to get you thinking about who are you going to contact about things, but then trying to make it easy to do that. And I think, when I think about you families having to do all of this, and then having the pandemic school restrictions on top of it, I can imagine that you might want to have a number for your assistive tech device. Who's the support? Who's the person you call for help with that? Who's your district tech content accessibility person? Who are you going to call when your kid can't access stuff? So it's just, things like that. I would include who are some mentors you can call who are blind and who can help you with particular issues. Who's your state parents of blind children president, things like that. So I think a contact list, and this is something that maybe it changes every year, and maybe for the most part it doesn't change from year to year. Maybe it's just the teacher that changes. So it's handy to have something like this, I would think. And in secondary school, of course, everything gets more complicated because now there are 8 teachers, not 1 or 3. There's a guidance counselor, there are other people involved. So I'm just throwing out an idea for when your kid's in secondary school, here's each class, here's each teacher, and here's how I can get in touch with them. So just to have this in your notebook. So I know I'm rambling on and on. Any questions or comments about that?
I would
Maybe some-
definitely like a copy of your form.
Okay, okay. I will, at the end, I'll throw up my phone and my email, and you're welcome to just send me an email and I'll send it to you. No problem.
Okay, great.
Okay, you're welcome. So now back to the binder. So that was, who do you call about this and how do you take notes about those calls? You've gotten that stuff organized, and now you're going back to your binder, and you want to have a section that's about evaluations. So where is that original, who made that original referral? Where is that document? Where's your signed consent to evaluate your student? This is where you can keep the school-based special education evaluation, supposed to occur every 3 years. And what kind of information is there? Well, here you can get it all together and put it in your binder. You would also want to put here any kind of independent or private evaluations that you have, or maybe even notes for informal evaluations. And then you can also put here any letters that you've written that are requesting an independent evaluation. So that's a big topic, I'm not going to get into that letter or why you would write one or what it even means, but this is where you could put the copy of that letter and the response from your district. It would be in this section of your binder. So, okay. And this is where I would put, personally, I put any kind of state mandated testing results. I put them here because I always figured it was, and even though those tests were given, at the time they were given to kind of see how the school was doing, I thought it was telling if my kid performed really well or poorly or whatever in a given area, right? Because that can kind of give you an idea in a way that's not just grade related, report card related, on how your child is doing compared to other kids in their school, and where there might be some shortfalls that need to be taken care of in the IEP. So that's just me. Okay, you want to have a section on that's just the IEP. So the suggestions are keep 2 IEPs in the binder. You don't need to have, their kindergarten IEP when they're in 10th grade. Keep the current one in last year's, or the current one in a draft one, or whatever. Any kind of prior written notice documentation, your IEP meeting notes. Here you might keep your notes separately, or maybe refer to your spiral notebook. The notes for this meeting I kept them in my spiral notebook on page 31 to 36, whatever. Our district started sending someone who took notes for meetings on a district provided form. And the form had boxes, and it had boxes like, what did the parent bring up? What are the concerns of the school? What is the resolution? Who's going to do what? So, and we would get a copy of that, and I would put it in the file with the IEP. Maybe there's a 504 plan. And then at this point, you might want to be inserting a follow-up and action item list. So if there are things that are missing, if there are goals you want to be thinking about, maybe you put them with the IEP. Okay. Another section, another folder, progress. So in this case, you want to have your kid's school file, whatever the records the school is keeping, the school is making. So their report cards. This is another place where you could put the statewide or mandated testing scores. When your child is older, maybe this is where you put their ACT score or their SAT score. For reasons that you may want to put an attendance record or disciplinary record, I don't know, whatever sorts of school records there are. And you may find that you don't have them. So like I remember at one point that we were missing test scores and I needed to get them. And so I wrote a letter about that. So that's an really easy letter to write. You should also be receiving IEP progress reports at the same frequency as regular ed report cards. Those can go in here. There's another thing that you can think about doing. Personally, I think I was kind of overwhelmed by this, but you may want to, with your child, track their goal progress independently. And maybe you want to pick one goal out of the 6 goals on the IEP. So it's not too much work. Maybe it's a tech goal, or maybe it's a Braille reading goal, whatever. And just there's understood.org has a goal tracker template so that you can kind of think about a goal and think about, is this goal too hard? Is it too easy? Is it not really something that it can be measured, which is technically what it's supposed to be if it's on the IEP? Or is the measurement kind of like arbitrary? Is it BS? And it's by tracking goals and tracking your and your child's kind of interpretation of progress on those goals that's going to allow you to request service time, request a change in O&M instructor, request ESY services. You're only going to get those things if they're not progressing appropriately on their goals. And it doesn't have to be just the school that's tracking goals. It can be you as well. So I think it's worth thinking about, but in a way that doesn't kind of overwhelm you or your kid. And it's also true, I think, for us that like we would be so exhausted by the time the IEP meeting was over that I didn't even remember what the goals were. It's like, which is sad, but it would be a way to just refresh your memory through the course of a quarter or whatever. What were we supposed to be working on with this? No. Okay. Let's see. Okay, binder contents. And this is about the end of this. So I think it's worth keeping this in mind, which is samples of work. So having a place where you can show other people how your child is doing their homework. What is a test like for them? What is some art that they like to do? If a class is doing an art project, what did your child produce in that? What are some other assignments that illustrate your child's success or their challenge or their interests, right? I think it's also worth including in this binder system some samples of accessible documents. So good ones, bad ones, ugly ones. So because these are valid. So put some examples in poorly prepared math, poorly transcribed math in either direction, a really crappy graphic that somebody threw together that doesn't work for your kid. Keep a few of those on hand, and then also keep ones that are good. I mean, it may not have even be your child's, but maybe you came across a graphic, tactile graphic for the lunar surface. It's really good. And it gives a regular ed teacher an idea for what's out there, because they don't know what a good graphic looks like. Have some examples of good ones. Make a list of some websites that your child can really use. They're accessible and they can get information from this. Share that with people. And then keep some awards, keep some achievements, keep some good things in this document. This is sort of your child, their personality. What do they enjoy? What's been frustrating? Right? It's a place to put that. And if you need any really bad graphics, I still kept them because they still they're entertaining in a really horrible way. So, so if you
Let's
need
see
any. Sorry, you want to
Let's
see
see
them? Oh,
one.
I probably actually have them around. Let's see. let's see, I have them here. So like I have a binder that has tactile graphic standards, tools to use. Let's see, do I have any examples in here? Yeah, so here's some examples. These aren't ones that I made, but like here's, I'm gonna hold this up to the screen. So this is a thermal paper raised image that has Braille, and it has, this is a science image, it has chromosome on it. And it's just, it's really clear. It's one of a series about meiosis, and it's clear, it's well described, it's got the right kind of lines. So that's a good example that I could take to school to show. I don't know if I have any bad ones in here. That's a topic for another day, but you know, there were some, I could remember electric circuits with hot glue, and like hot glue, they would enlarge it first. I don't know why, but they would take something and they would enlarge it, and it was a cartoon anyway, and then they would trace it in hot glue, and it's like it meant nothing to anybody. So just, it's something to show the regular ed teachers, because they're coming into this with no knowledge, no background whatsoever. They have no idea what's good and what's not good, and you can teach them that. So, okay. Lastly, okay, these are, you might want to have maybe in your binder, or maybe a second folder that has blindness specific resources. Maybe it has some books on time provisions, maybe it has Braille standards, maybe it has some articles that you like, maybe it's cane travel information. You might want to have that set aside. And then for a number of our kids, there are also medical situations that need to be monitored, and that their medical diagnosis, their physical health is actually part and parcel of the blindness visual impairment. And so there's a lot of information out there on how to organize that information, and including it in the special ed binder. And I would encourage people to go ahead and look for that. And then if you really wanted to, you could put your parental rights, you know, your newsprint thing in there as well. You know, whatever. You can put in your binder whatever you want to put in your binder. Just you want it labeled in a way that you can find it again. So, okay. So I think that's the end of the binder section. So I'm flashing up here on the screen my contact info. So it has my name, my last name is spelled R-E-N as in Nancy, F as in Frank, R-A-N-Z as in zebra. And my number is 801-599-3557. And my email address is prenfranz, so PRENFRANZ @gmail.com. And I'm happy if anybody wants to contact me about any of this, please just let me know. So, okay, I will close there and give the floor back to Casey.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
How did you print out emails back and forth? Did you print the whole thing?
Oh, emails between me and the district or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a paper person, so I would print them out. Yeah, I would. Yeah, I mean, I kept them on my computer too. I didn't delete anything. So, and back it up. But yeah, I would actually print them out. If it was a serious, I mean, if it wasn't something serious, I didn't really worry too much about that. I might make a note that I emailed somebody about something, just to keep track of it in my head. And a paper copy, it's up to you. If you like having a piece of paper as a record and as a reminder of what happened and what was said, then I would just print it out, you know, make it a PDF and and printed out in an easy way. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, thank you, Pat.
You're
We have Donna here with a door prize. Let's see.
Oops, sorry, I accidentally clicked it. Okay.
That is too funny.
Okay, Sally, congratulations.
Thank you.
Sally, if you just want to, if you could put your email in the chat, then I'll send that right over to you. You could do private chat or whatever works.
All right.
May I ask what the door prize is?
It's a Amazon gift certificate.
For $25.
Congrats, Sally.
Yeah, we have a few more, so stay tuned. We have about 3 more to give away before the meeting is over with. So if you decide to leave early, you might miss out on your door prize. Everybody's name is in there. So, okay, so let's talk about, Pat covered a lot of information about the binders. And actually I started a medical binder with my daughter when she was born, just a few days after she was born. And it is very similar to what Pat went through with the IEP binders. And then as she got old enough for school, I moved into the IEP binders. So I'm a paper person too. I like to keep paper. I like to print the papers. I like to have, when I see binders on special, I buy 2 or 3 at a time because I'm a paper person. I would like to take just a minute and hear from anybody that does this in a similar way, but that is not a paper person, that is doing it electronically. Is there anybody on the meeting that is doing the tracking of the folder electronically?
For the IEP stuff and the school things, most of it comes to us on paper. So I try to keep up with paper, but I do struggle on that. But but for medical, this day and age, we download a lot of his information. So we keep his medical stuff in a folder, a file folder called Aiden's Medical, and then it's by year and then by provider and provider type. And stick PDFs of everything in those folders.
Okay, very good.
Carlton?
Yeah, as we have things with the medical now that are, the hospital keeps their own thing through My Chart and through Epic, and they save everything that way. But I still like to print off all the blood work, all the test results, things like that, put them in a binder so that if I go to a doctor and they can't access the Epic, then they have it. I did not start with the IEPs doing it electronically. I stuck with the paper version because everything that the school was giving me, like you said, was paper. So we just kind of stuck with the paper. So we have some parents that come to us. Carlton is saying that she keeps track electronically and it allows her to search digitally. So that's good. So if you have a good scanner, you could scan your documents in that the school district gives you. If they give you paper copies, you could scan those in, like with a good OCR scanner or PDF scanner, you could scan those in, and that would be a good way. And then you could search digitally for them. I just have not moved to that. Sarah says that she uses Google Drive to save everything on. I wish I could say I was better with Google Drive, but I'm not. I do lots of things through Dropbox and put things in folders through Dropbox, but I still find myself wanting that paper copy because I'm just, my Dropbox gets a little disorganized, just like my desktop does, and my hard desk, my physical desk that sits in the room, it gets kind of disorganized there too. So I still like that paper copy and binders. I do agree with Pat on setting a day and putting it on your calendar to work on the binder, because it is work. And if you miss a time period, then you get stacks of papers that are not put in the right place, and then it just builds up, and then it just becomes overwhelming. And then you think, I can't do this because it's so overwhelming. So, and then you're so fatigued, just like Pat said, from the IEP meeting itself, that you forget what's going on. So we want to move into, we've talked about the documentation that we should have. So what happens if you don't have this documentation? Because a lot of parents that come to me for IEP advice, and they want me to help advocate in their school district for IEP issues, I start going through their folder, and even if they've done really good at keeping notes, they don't have everything, and they may not know that they were supposed to have it. So, for example, evaluations. A lot of parents don't have the evaluations. They will be told in the IEP meeting that the evaluation took place, that the evaluation, and they'll read off what they put in the IEP about the evaluation, but they never get a copy of it, digitally or hard copy. They never get a copy of it. So we want to show you just a few examples of writing letters to request this information, okay? So any letter, just general letter writing that you write, you want to be able, for the school district personnel, whomever you're writing it to know who you are, who your child is, what program they're in, what their IEP is classified as, if it's vision only, or if it's vision with multiple disabilities, or whatever the categories are. And then you want to give a clear description of what you are requesting, okay? Now, Pat's going to come back on in just a few minutes, and she's going to talk about effective letter writing and effective communication, okay? But I just want to show you a few examples of letters that Wright's Law has some of these, understood.com, .org. I'm sorry, I got the com in the org. Understood.org has some, but I wanted to show you, I'm going to share my screen for just a minute and just talk through some of these letters. So, for example, a letter requesting a draft copy of the school's proposed IEP. And Pat shared these letters with us through a psychologist that worked with her and that she was friends with, that actually gave her examples of these letters. So you want it to look proper, okay? Because I can tell you from sitting on both sides of the IEP table, sitting on the side working for the school district and sitting on the side working with parents, school districts will pay attention if they think you know what you're doing. Even if you have to fake what you're doing and make it look good, they will pay attention if you know. I have literally heard school districts say, this parent doesn't know what they're doing, so don't worry about it. And then I've heard school districts say, this mom is on top of it, so we have to dot our I's and cross our T's with her. We have to make sure that everything is done correctly. So you want it to look like a formal letter, okay? And you can do this on your desktop. You want your name, the address, the phone number. You want what you're writing about, your child's full name and date of birth, so it's easy for them to find them in the system. And then you state clearly, my son or daughter, and then you give the name again. IEP annual review is due in about 6 weeks. I am writing to request that the school team provide a full draft copy of the proposed IEP. Okay, because most of you have gone to IEPs and it works like this. You get nothing before you go into the IEP meeting. And then you go into the IEP meeting and they have this draft copy that they have already written out of what they are proposing. And then they read through that copy and then they ask you to sign it. Okay? Well, you can request an IEP draft ahead of time. Okay? And for example, in this letter, it's at least 2 weeks in advance to our IEP meeting. And that way you can review the IEP before you go into the meeting. And that way you can make your notes. You can have clear thoughts of what you would like to ask, things that you would like to be changed. You can make sure that everything that you are wanting in that IEP is in there, because you are not thinking clearly when you are right in the midst of an IEP because of emotions. Okay, we all have emotions, and you have to be prepared. Okay, I even tell parents all the time, I've worked on both sides of the IEP table, for the school district and as a parent. As a parent, I take an advocate with me because I need somebody that's not as emotionally involved to take notes, to keep me on track, to make sure I ask the questions. And if you have the draft copy ahead of time, then you can make sure that you've gone through, you have all your questions written down, and you make sure you cover those. Okay. Another example of a letter would be another one that I see all the time when I start working with school parents trying to get their school district to do the right thing, is a request for an IEE, okay, an independent evaluation, okay, an IEE. And you are required, I mean, you are allowed an independent evaluation, an evaluation that is done by someone that's not in the school district. Okay, so you are allowed to have that evaluation. This is a proper way that you would ask for an independent educational evaluation. Same format. You have your name, your address, your phone number, you have your child's name, you have the date of birth, you have who it's going to, which is usually the special ed director. And then you say my son or daughter and their name once again. And then you are writing in requesting an IEP educational evaluation at public expense, because I or we disagree with the evaluation that was conducted. Okay, you have the right to an IEE at the school district's expense. Okay, they may try to tell you that you don't, but you do. And if you need more documentation on that, Wright's Law has a lot of documentation there that will support and tell you exactly in the law where you are allowed to have an independent educational evaluation. Okay, so now we need to talk about how effective communication when we write these letters, because one of the things that when I go in to work with school districts to advocate for parents, I have the problem, or the problem exists, with the parent and the school district have already come to blows, so to speak. They've already come to an impassable place that they can't agree upon the student's education, and emotions have come into play, and their relationship has been fractured. Okay, and you are not there to be friends with the school district. You are there to get your child an education. However, It works a lot better if everyone is on the same page and if you can work together. And once that relationship is fractured between the parent and the school district, it's very hard to rebuild that. Even if I come in and I do independent evaluations and I show that the school district is in the wrong, and we propose a plan, because I don't ever believe come into an IEP meeting and give everything that's wrong and not have a solution ready to give them as a possibility of what could happen. So, because part of the problem is they just don't know. They just don't know. They haven't taught a blind kid before or a low vision kid, and they just don't know. So if we can educate them in the process, then it's good for any other students that are coming through the school district. Now, have I run into school districts that just have a rotten attitude? I mean, just bottom line, just rotten attitude. And that answer is yes, I have. And no matter what solution we brought, it was not viable in their opinion. So we've run into those situations too. But the more that we can keep that communication going between the parent and the school district and keep a good line of communication, the better we can solve the problems that the student is having, the issues that they're having in their education. So there is an effective way to write these letters that includes your tone. It includes the way that you portray the issue. And we're going to let Donna do one more door prize right now. And then Pat's going to come back on and talk about a little bit of effective communication.
Okay, here we go. And Fawn, congratulations, a $25 Amazon gift card for you too.
Yay. Okay, so Pat, talk to us about effective communication and how we can keep those lines open with the school district.
Okay, and I will try to cruise a little bit here, but people again are welcome to interrupt me here. Okay, let's see. Where I have to figure out where it is. Okay, here we go. So what I think about, so in terms of effective communication, is communicating in a way that is respectful, that's fact-based, that isn't a reaction, that isn't this is the last straw for my family kind of letter. The hope is that if effective letters and communications are implemented early, then we hope that one can avoid these totally toxic situations where there's so much confrontation between IEP team members that work for the school district and IEP team members that are supporting the family. And it happens so frequently, and they become so ugly. And the idea of thinking about effective communication is a way to try to communicate in a way that will avoid that kind of toxicity building up. So let's see, I'm going to cruise through this. So this is primarily about letter writing, but this has to do with phone calls or other kind of inquiries as well. And the basis is this. So the idea is that if you take the time to think about what you're going to say or write, that it gives you the mental energy to think about what you want to communicate, to state your concerns clearly, to think about what you're going to say, what you've written, make changes to that, It gives you the time, the luxury to have somebody else read a letter or read the notes, read your script for a phone call and make suggestions on how to improve it. And I'll tell you, even, I am almost 60 years old and I hate making phone calls. And even for me to call the plumber, it's like, I got to write a script out to pay somebody money to come do something, right? It's just me. But it can be really helpful if you can take the time to think about what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. Basically, that is effective communication. The advantages to letter writing is that it doesn't just give you the chance to think about what you want to say, it gives the recipient the chance to think about how they want to respond. So you're not going to get in a fight with your regular ed teacher, chances are, if you've written them a nice note about something, and then they have time to think about what they want to say back to you. And it's more likely to be a kind of professional interaction. Writing it down also makes the documentation easy, whether you're saving the letters that you write on your, as Sarah said, on her Google Drive, or you're printing it out and saving it in a cardboard, manila file folder. It doesn't matter. It's easy to keep a record of that letter if you've actually written it down. So, okay. So this is what Casey, the sort of general overview to what the letters that Casey showed, which is, what do you want to put in your letter or your communication? You want to make sure it's dated. You want to give your kid's name, what's their school, what is the program, what's their IEP classification, and then why are you writing? What's the issue? Think about what you want, not what you don't want to happen. Make sure they have your contact information so that they can respond, and then end with a thank you and with a sincerely yours, or I appreciate the work you're doing, whatever. Just something nice at the end, just helps the tone. I'm not going to talk about this except to say, so these are other topics to think about. And this is something that, I don't know, Carlton or someone else with kind of the more legal expertise can think about at some point. But, when does it have to be mailed? When can it just be an email? All that sort of stuff is beyond me. One thing that there are a couple things that are clear, which is that if you have a formal letter of complaint, there needs to be a request, because then your IEP team has to answer it. That's a requirement. Picking your battles. This is key. And I think picking the tone that goes along with the battle is kind of a sub part to that. Not everything has to be challenged. Not everything is going to work perfectly. And realizing that, your teachers are stressed out as well. Their caseloads are high, or they have in Utah, they have 30 little, they have in a math class, they have 40 kids in a calculus class, whatever. Pick your battles, and go with what your heart is telling you. Let's see. Okay. So when you're going to write a letter, you want to be able to answer the question, why am I writing it? What am I trying to achieve with this letter? What are my concerns? What do I want the person to do about the letter? And what kind of response do I want? Do I want a meeting? Do I want a phone call? Do I want something else? So you want to think about those things. Who are you going to send the letter to? So this is actually, and I have a lot of words on this slide and I don't want to go through them all, but you want to make sure you're sending the letter to the right person. And that's where your contacts list can be helpful. It's worth knowing, like within your school district or your school, what's kind of the chain of command, and how does the chain of command differ for kids who are blind versus kids with other types of disabilities. So our kids in my district, and I think this is true in general, that blind and visually impaired services might be considered related services. They might be health related services. That's what they were in our district. And the person overseeing that department, she had to oversee all the OT people, the PT, the speech people, the hearing people, everybody. And but I would write her instead of writing the special ed coordinator for our elementary school, because that person had nothing to do with the blind kids in the school. So that's something that's going to depend on your school and your program. And maybe that's your first letter, like, dear special ed person, or dear TVI, can you please tell me, who do I contact for issues regarding O&M, regarding technology, regarding this, regarding that, right? So yeah, and then I would also suggest that if you're sending your letter to somebody who's not the TVI or the general educator or whatever, send them a copy so that they know what's going on, or have a conversation with them so that they're not hit out of the blue by a principal or a special ed director, and have no idea that something's coming down the pike. Give them a heads up. Okay, so in terms of being effective with how you communicate, you want to formulate your thoughts first. And there are different techniques for doing this. And especially if this is a technique, it's an idea worth thinking about if you're feeling kind of emotionally overwhelmed by the situation. Because if it's just a fact letter, you're just inquiring about something simple, you don't need to do this necessarily. But if it's a complex, emotionally laden issue, take the time to formulate your thoughts about it. So one technique is you get a few sheets of paper, or you have a few different digital files, however you want to think about it, a few different audio files. On the first sheet, you write why, the second sheet what, and other. So why are you writing this letter? And then brainstorm. Why do I want to write this? I'm so angry that the teacher did this. I'm so angry that my kid was left on the playground. I can't believe. You can put whatever words you want. It doesn't matter. The idea is that you're just dumping what you're thinking about onto the sheet of paper. On the second sheet, what are my goals in writing this letter? What are you trying to fix? What are you trying to get help with? I really want my kid to get her math assignments on time. I really want my kid to be able to use her cane in the hallway. Whatever it is, what do you want to get out of this? And then any other thoughts you have, you can put them on the third sheet. And this is the kind of thing where you just want to do it quickly. You don't have to worry about details or spelling or order or anything. Just like, what's your brain trying to work through? What are you caught up on? And then, like, you may notice that you need more than one letter. And like, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about letters that we wrote and thinking we definitely had times where there was more than one letter that needed to go. And this helps you figure out, okay, I have a bunch of different stuff that my kid is having to face at school. And this letter I need to write a letter to the special ed director. I need to write a letter to the teacher. I need to do this. It just helps you organize in your head how you're thinking about it. Okay. And then when you're writing them up, when you're starting to write your letter, what's key to keep in mind is when you've done this sort of dumping your thoughts on paper, you've let your emotions get all kind of tangled up in this, and you're allowing that to happen. When you write the letter, you want to distill that emotional part away and keep the facts. And this is going to ultimately help you get what you want. For example, a fact kind of letter would be, help me understand how something happens. Help me understand the process for how Braille is transcribed in our district. Help me understand how books are ordered here. What's the schedule? What is that like? And leave out the my kid is really suffering and we're all really upset because she's not getting her materials on time. The people who are making decisions about when you get your materials, they don't care. I mean, they might care that your child is suffering. They don't want your kid to suffer, but that's not going to make them do the right thing. What's going to make them do the right thing is, or answer your question, is to just pose the question. And it just helps you keep the tone of your letter pleasant. It gives facts, just facts. And one thing, there's a funny kind of section in Wright's Law on last straw letters. And I've written the last straw letter, and they get you nothing. They become this long litany of all the stuff that's going wrong. And it's not that the people in charge don't need to know what's going wrong. It's just that they don't know what to do with a last straw letter. They know you're upset. They know that things aren't working, but you're not asking them to do anything except letting you vomit all this, excessive anger on them. And it can be really rewarding to write a last straw letter. It can be therapeutic. If you write one, send it to me, I'm happy to accept your letter, right? You don't, or give it to a friend, or print it out and light it on fire, whatever you want to do with it. Just don't send it. That's my suggestion. It won't get you anywhere. It just makes people angry. So then you're going to start working on your first draft, and there's some things to remember with this. First of all, if your letter is sent to anybody who's not your child's like immediate regular ed teacher, or their immediate kind of service provider, their TVI, their O&M person, then that person doesn't know your kid. And so you can't make assumptions that they know your kid or the situation, and they're not going to know the history. And so that's another situation where if you're getting all upset about stuff, they don't know anything about this, they just know they're getting a letter from some random parent in a school district. So keep it short, to the point, keep it fact-based, and then the person reading it will know how to respond to that letter. And then, like, my kids hated this in school, the great hamburger of writing an essay. But here I think we can think about it in terms of writing a letter. So the first paragraph, as Casey said, and as we've said before, you want to make sure it has your name, your kid's name, their date of birth, their school program, their grade, their special ed status, all this sort of facts, so that the person knows who the kid is that you're writing about. And then you're going to briefly state, like 1 or 2 sentences, why you're writing. Maybe it's to complain about something, maybe it's requesting information, whatever. And the reason you're writing should be specific. So this is where, when you look back at your brain dump, maybe there are 5 letters that need to be written, and here is 1 letter, 1 reason, and there's no need to elaborate. So I had some examples, like I was remembering from our past. So you could say, I'm requesting information regarding something, the method and the people involved in producing assignments in Braille in our district. We've noticed that this is happening. We've noticed that our child is discouraged from using her cane in the lunchroom. I am requesting that something be done about X, the lack of usable graphics provided for her geography assignments. It's just 1 or 2 sentences, and that's it. That's the general topic of this particular letter that you're writing. The second paragraph is going to be an expansion on that. You want to tell the person who's reading the letter what happened, but just the facts and how you came to know them. So following through from above. So we've noticed that there's a big time lag between when sighted students receive their math assignments and when my child receives his in Braille. The math teacher and my child are both frustrated, and my child is falling behind in her homework, his homework, whatever. My child has told me that she has to leave her cane at the lunchroom door and must rely totally on other students to guide her in the space. Sometimes that process works, but often the student guides don't know what to do, And they've even left my student behind in the lunchroom without her cane. My student has access only to the text of the textbook. However, in addition to the textbook, the geography teacher, Ms. X, prepares her own assignments and guides, which include political and geographic maps. My child does not receive tactile maps that correspond to those assignments, although the tests and the homework for the class rely on those maps. So that one's a little, the last one is a little thicker because there are more facts. There's more that the reader needs to know in order to proceed, in order to process the requests that I'm going to make of them. But there's nothing about how it makes me so angry that nobody thought about this. It makes me so mad that there've been geography students for 50 years in Utah and nobody's made a tactile Utah map. I mean, it's like, I don't have to say this, because even though you know it in your heart and you know it's right, the person receiving the letter, it doesn't make them do anything. It only makes them upset, and you don't need that. Okay, the final paragraph is where you ask what you expect the recipient to do and by what date. So maybe it's going to be, can you please send me a description of the process that materials are brailled by a certain date, including who's responsible for that. And then after that, I'd like to have a meeting in order to discuss what works and what doesn't. We believe that arriving at a good method will make everyone involved breathe easier, whatever you want to say. We'd like to arrange a meeting to occur by a certain day with my child's homeroom teacher, lunchroom aides, O&M instructor, and our advocate in order to arrive at a plan that's safe and encourages independence as stated in the IEP. We're requesting a meeting by a certain day that includes the geography teacher, the district brailleist, the tactile graphics producer, and our advocate to see if we can come up with a fair and equitable solution. It's just, I'm making this request and I want to hear back from you by a certain day about it. And then lastly, you want to just be polite and say, thank you for taking the time to work with us. We look forward to meeting, sincerely, blah, blah, blah. And I wouldn't get too hung up on being like super formal grammatically. Like, I mean, you can use the word we and my, our, whatever, it's a personal letter. Use those words, it's fine. And even if you are going to use their response to negotiate for services, maybe you're going to ask for direct service time for your TVI to help your kid learn to read their graphics, or maybe you're going to ask for service time from the O&M instructor for help in the lunchroom, whatever. You don't need to tell them that at this point. You don't need to tell them what's coming down the pike. If they're thoughtful, they'll know. But you're giving them a chance to respond before doing that. And then the last couple steps are to put that letter aside for a day or two. The best technique for writing that I've ever come across is to read it out loud to yourself. And it's horrible. It's a miserable thing to do. It's really embarrassing. I don't know why. It's like you do it with nobody else around, but it's remarkably effective in terms of picking up things, little quirky things that don't work. Language that's is too aggressive, whatever. Make revisions to your letter. It's also nice to have another person read your letter, because that person can help you stick to just the facts, can help you tone it down if need be, can help you make sure that the request, what you're asking for, is really clear, can help you if they're like weird spelling or formatting things that your spell check isn't going to pick up on. Just letting somebody else read it can be really helpful. And in our family, it was just like, I would write a letter and my husband would read it, and it would get better at that point. Run your spell check, run your grammar. This is another case where it's appearances. It's people in the admin are going to make judgments about you based on what your letter looks like. And so make it look neat and run the spell check. And And I think that's it. Yeah. So that was the last thing. And then, mark it in your calendar. I should be hearing back from them by someday. And then make sure you do. So that's all I have to say about it. It's basically keep it to the facts and keep it simple. Bottom line. Okay.
Lots of good stuff there, Pat. Very good. As much as we can keep a positive attitude when we're writing, I joked with Pat yesterday about saying, yes, I really want to say this situation really stinks and you're not doing your job, but we kind of have to withhold that and put it in a proper language. So thank you. So Donna, if you want to give us one more door prize before we open the floor up for question and answer.
Okay, let's see. Shelby Bowman, congratulations, $25 to Amazon.
Thank you.
Yay, lots of good door prizes tonight. I happened to notice that my name's not on that spinner, but I'm just kidding, Donna. I just happened to notice when it was going around. Thank you so much for helping us out, Donna. Okay, so we're going to open up. We have about 15 to 18 minutes left. So we're going to open up for any questions and that you might have from the presentation tonight. I will say there is a lot of information on our NOPBC website about IEPs and the functionality of IEPs and what should be included in IEPs. So if you need that information, just know that information and those resources are there. We have several recordings from convention this past summer that talks in depth about IEPs. But what are your questions that you have for us tonight?
Sarah,
Sarah,
is there a recommended time or a time that is dictated by IEP law that the IEP team needs to get the evaluation results summary to the parent before the IEP meeting?
I'm gonna see if Carlton is on, if she wants to answer that. In my knowledge, Sarah, the schools that I have worked with, it was 30 days. They had 30 days to do the evaluation and get the results to the parent. So, but I'm not for sure. I'm gonna let Carlton answer that one.
Carlton?
Maybe if I can just rephrase, so not from the time that you request an evaluation, but the time frame for you to review the results that you've requested for this testing that has been done for your child prior to the IEP meeting.
Okay, Carlton.
Carlton, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. It really, all of that depends on state law, Sarah. It's a great question. The only state I know that requires it is Maryland. Yay, Maryland, yay, NFB. And it's through the hard work of NFB of Maryland that Maryland does. However, even if your state does not require it, you can require it. I started doing this back when Anna Catherine was in early elementary school because I got tired of feeling ambushed at IEP meetings. I'm not saying anybody was ambushing me, but that's how I was feeling. And I said, you know what, I can't be in this IEP meeting and be reading reports at the same time. I can't do both. I need the reports at least 3 days before the meeting. Now I grew it to 5, and I grew it to 5 business days, 5 school days over the years. And I did actually cancel an IEP meeting because I didn't have it in time. I said, well, I'm sorry, I need this time. And you did not get it to me in time. That's fabulous. No problem. We're going to reschedule. And it got to the point, they got trained. And at one point, it was a little contentious with this. We had good times, and then we were in a little contentious time. And they called me and said, "Carlton, we're not going to get it to you in time. Let's just reschedule it now." I said, "Okay." So you can train them and stick by your guns. It is not you. They have to, under federal law, allow you to participate in the IEP meeting. The way you'll ask is say, "I cannot participate in the IEP meeting if I am seeing reports for the first time." And that's how you get it.
Okay, thank you, Carlton. Very good information. I know I usually tell parents to request it ahead of time so that they have time to look over it, because I don't like being put in the situation just like you were. The meetings start and then they hand you 15 different 10-page documents, and you're trying to go through the documents and listen to them talk at the same time. So I don't like that. So I always tell parents to request it ahead of time. Do we have another question?
Where's a good spot to go to find out what the law is for your state?
Usually some states, now they make it very hard to find it, but usually in most states, the State Department of Education will have a link to their policies and procedures, and it will have the state mandates tagged in that website. But it's just very hard. You'll have to look through that website to find them. They don't make it easy. Like in the state that I'm in, you have to dig through layers and layers and layers of the State Department before you get that. But you also have your procedural safeguards that have some of the legal information in there as well.
So it would be state-based, not school district-based?
Yeah, the state would trump the school district. Yes. So do we have other questions? Good questions. You guys are coming up with good questions.
We have an IEP meeting coming up because we have a new diagnosis of legally blind. His vision has not changed since May, but we didn't have the diagnosis. And the school's doing a preliminary meeting with us. Any suggestions about what we should talk about in that preliminary meeting? I think they're being really nice and maybe doing it so we don't get overwhelmed and snowballed in the IEP meeting.
Yeah, I think so as well. It sounds like they are trying to take a step forward and give you as much information so that they can write the IEP and draft the IEP and have it for you for that day of the IEP. I would treat it just like an IEP meeting. I would have any questions written down that you want to have answered. I would have any concerns that you have. I would want to know how is his services going to change because of the new diagnoses, what accommodations and is going to be offered because of the new diagnosis. I would treat it just like an IEP meeting, and I would go through and start with the concerns and to see how things are going to be different. I think, I don't know, but I would almost think that they're doing that to gather more information so that they can better write a draft IEP to present to you the day of the IEP meeting.
Okay. And oh, what did I think of? And then I forgot.
Oh, I do that all the time.
Miriam, this is Sarah. I was going to just say, make sure that if they are going to present you with testing, don't have them do it during the meeting. Have them give it to you beforehand. regardless if it's a preliminary meeting or a regular IEP meeting. Sometimes they want to explain the testing and you just need to have time to look over that first.
Okay, yeah. Oh, I remembered my other question. Somebody mentioned something about their IEP having a parent concerns section, and our current IEP doesn't have that kind of section. How do I get that in the IEP to happen?
I would ask for it. I would just come out and say that you have reviewed other IEPs from other parents and they have a parent concern section and you would like your concerns to be documented on the legal document, which is the IEP. And could we find a place to put those?
And is there a way that I could see sample IEPs that people are like, wow, we did really good with my kid's IEP. I'm so pleased. But yet it's private. It's, you know, it's health issues and stuff. So is there any way to view like a sample IEP so I can get ideas of what should be in there?
Very good. Very good question. I don't know if anybody here would be willing to share their IEP with you. All the IEPs I have personal information on them, and they're really individual because they are individualized to the student. So yours would look a little different. And Sarah says she's happy to share one with you. She is happy to help you with that. So that would be wonderful, Sarah. Thank you so much for doing that. I almost think that we need to create a sample IEP, but the problem with that is I'm afraid parents would want to stick to just what was in that IEP instead of getting the things that was individualized to their child. So that's my only holdback for us writing a sample IEP and posting it on the website. It would be because you wouldn't want to make it look just like that because your child is different from every other child. And those kids are different from your kid, and you would want it to be individualized.
Yeah.
We could come up with one that had the main sections, though, the main
like having the parent concerns section and like this section, because all ours has is, well, we tried to throw him a ball, he couldn't catch it, here's the goal, that he catches a ball from 10 feet away. I'm like so yeah,
no,
Robin?
that's not a very good one.
it makes me laugh because they set this goal, his vision is not changed, and we just got a diagnosis of legally blind, and that was his goal, to catch a ball thrown from 10 feet away.
Yeah, if I were you, I would go back and look at the NOPBC website, because we have the sessions that we did this summer at the convention on IEPs. And the first one, I don't remember if it's called All About IEPs or something like that. It gives you the sections. It tells you the sections that are required by law to be in the IEP.
Excellent. Yes, that's what I want. Yes.
Yes, I would go back and view that. And that's a very generic goal that they gave him, because I have seen that goal on sample websites, catch a ball from 10 feet away. I mean, I literally have seen that goal on a sample, you know, on websites doing sample goals. So they didn't really even individualize it for him. They just pulled it off of a website and put it on there.
Yes, they're very overwhelmed. The principal's like, I've never had a child that was blind, and he's spina bifida and everything else too. So they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. And that's okay. It's okay for them not to know what they're doing. It's not okay for them not to want to find out how to do things. It's not okay for them not to seek the knowledge. I'm always okay with somebody saying, I don't know how. But if you're not willing to learn how, then that's where the problem comes in. Okay, good. All right, well, let's do, are there any more questions before we wrap up with another door prize? Are there any more questions?
I have one quick question, if that's okay.
Yes.
So I'm gonna turn my video on just so it's easier.
Sure.
Our son is about to turn 3 in like 4 days. So we're just kind of entering into this whole world, going out of early intervention, which I just feel like is so much different than this. And we just recently had, I'm assuming that there's these programs all over the country, like the special education programs where they give services. And then if he ends up qualifying for that, then we'll write an IEP and all of that stuff. We just had like the initial meeting to see if he even needs an assessment to see if he qualifies for, so like an assessment to get an assessment to see if he needs, can qualify for services. And we're waiting. So they determined that there needs to be a deeper, assessment done. And that's in a couple weeks. And I'm just curious, I know I shouldn't like harp on the what ifs, but what do I do if they end up saying no? And then I just don't get an IEP for my child? Like, am I allowed to go back and say, well, no, I don't agree with you, do another assessment? Like, what do I do if they say?
Absolutely. Absolutely, you are allowed to do that. Absolutely, you can say, I don't agree with this assessment. And that is where we talked about requesting an individual education evaluation
Okay.
at their expense. And you would get an individualized education plan based on that IE. You hope you would. You hope that it would turn out that way. But yeah, you could drive yourself crazy with the what ifs though. So you have to wait. You can have them in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
You can have them holding there just in case, but try not to be prepared, because now you can request an individualized, an independent evaluation. You
Okay.
can request that. Okay.
Perfect.
Stay close. What state are you in?
Virginia.
Virginia. Stay close to the NOPBC there in Virginia, or reach out to the national NOPBC. All of our information is on NOPBC website. And if you have any trouble after that first evaluation, just reach out to us and say, what's the next step? And we'll hold your hand through the next steps. Okay. We'll guide you through that. Okay.
I appreciate it.
Yes.
So overwhelming, and this is just so great. So we really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Sarah.
I had another, just a comment, and I've been advocating for a couple of families in IEP meetings, and I assumed that during their IEP meetings, it would follow the similar format that I was used to for our child's IEP meetings. And what was happening is that they were creating the IEP document after the fact, like after the meeting had taken place, and then sending the document later to the parent and not actually creating it during the IEP meeting. Is it a law that they have to be like, so I'm used to the document being done by the time our IEP meeting is done and it's emailed to me right then. Is there anything that dictates that, like, is there a law that dictates when that is compiled?
Carlton, I see you unmuted.
Carlton?
You want to go?
Yeah. Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you're unmuted.
Okay. No, there is no law that says they have to do it there. And in fact, I kind of like that they're not doing it there, because unfortunately, so many times when they have it there, there's a lot of pressure to sign. And I recommend that nobody sign right then and there, unless you have an amazing deal and you're afraid that somebody who was out sick might come and squash it later. Next says a thing. But there is no law, but it is really important to review it and to say, okay, did we say this? Did we not say this? And if you're taking notes during the meeting, a lot of times, a lot of school districts do that too. And it is great if they have a note taker to review all of the notes. This is what we discussed. This is what we decided. This is what we disagree about. And have that at the meeting. But the final IEP document does not have to be done at the meeting. And again, I do not recommend that anybody sign it at the meeting unless there are very, very compelling reasons to do so. Because as you know, it's stressful. Even Shelby, who hasn't gone through it yet, knows it's stressful. She hasn't even been through it yet, because it's stressful not even having gone through it yet. So give yourself allow yourself that time to breathe and think and reflect.
Thanks. I put one more in the chat. Is it lawful for the IEP team to decline to have the meeting recorded?
Nope, it is, well, not, okay, you have to have a reason. And the reason I use is, again, I need to be able to record this so I can participate. Because I can't fully participate in this meeting if I'm having to take notes. Also, if you have a spouse or just frankly, anybody else in the child's life, doesn't have to be related or not at all, say that this person cannot be here. I want this recording for that person. But again, you're going to really win points with the participation because case law is clear that parents must be afforded a right to participate in the meeting. And if you state in writing, I cannot participate in this meeting effectively if I don't record it, they have a right to record it too, but they don't have a right to refuse you the recordation.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, really great stuff there. So thank you all for joining us tonight. And remember, we do this every third Thursday of the month. Next month, we will focus on effective ways to teach Braille, and we will have some reading specialists that are also TVIs on to talk about Braille and effective ways to teach Braille, because as we know across the country, some of our students they're getting Braille, but they're not getting it in effective ways so that they can become proficient in Braille. So we will talk about that in the next third Thursday. So we're going to let Donna wrap it up with the last $25 door prize.
Oh, Sally, I think you got the first one right. Let's
Yeah,
spin
so
one more time.
Yeah, let's spin it again.
Sorry, I forgot to take out the ones that already. Erica, congratulations. Are you still here?
Oh, I think she has logged off.
Ah, okay. Try again.
It pays to stay till the end.
Sally, not that I took Sally off. All right, sorry, I'll get this here eventually. Miriam, all right, congratulations.
Okay, yay. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect timing.
Oh, Miriam, if I could get your email address in the chat, I'll send that gift card to you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.
If anybody wants to share their IEP, feel free to email it to me.
Donna, were you able to pull the chat off?
Yeah, that's actually what I'm working on right now.
Okay. And it's still recording.
Oh, sorry about that. Let me hit stop.